Now, Wesley Lowery, who is a national reporter for the Washington Post, joins us. Thank you so much for taking the time, Wesley.
Of course, thanks for having me.
So you've covered protests like this before, specifically in Ferguson, following the police killing of Michael Brown. Is Baton Rouge carrying the same amount of weight as Ferguson?
It certainly seems to be carrying the same amount of weight. And one thing that's fascinating to me is the many stark similarities between Ferguson, Missouri and Baton Rouge, right? And so in both cases, you're talking about cities with large portions of their black population that live in poverty, that don't receive the best educations in terms of the education system. Baton Rouge is one of the worst educational systems in Louisiana, a state with one of the worst educational systems. And then you also have a police force that does not necessarily have the best standing relationship with the community. And so what we're seeing in the streets is we're seeing the same chants, we're seeing the same anger and same pain from residents, and we also, so far, have been seeing a very similar response to police. Military gear, aggressive police tactics, massive arrests. We've had, 150 arrests, I believe, in 2 nights in Baton Rouge, and so those are certainly Ferguson-level arrests. In fact, those are outpacing Ferguson-level arrests.
As you mentioned, Baton Rouge doesn't have the best reputation in terms of the relationship between some minority communities and the officers. On the flip side, we keep hearing about Dallas being this, having a very good relationship. What can Baton Rouge do to improve before this situation spirals out of control?
Of course, and it's always important to note, right, that Dallas is definitely seen as one of the shining stars of a big city department. However, there's a relatively low bar. There is no police department in the United States of America that has a perfect, or in many, there are the community activists in any community who would say there's a bad relationship in Dallas, right? And so there's always a grain of salt with that. But in Dallas, what we've seen historically is a big shift. In the 70s and 80s, Dallas was considered one of the worst departments in the country. They had a series of terrible shootings that were condemned by pretty much everyone, of Hispanic men and of black men. You then also saw some police officers who were targeted themselves. But what Dallas did as it started to change was a few different things. First was you had the rise of black elected officials in the city of Dallas, the election of the first black mayor, the installation of the first 2 black police chiefs, elections of black judges and district attorneys and assistant district attorneys, state senators, county commissioners. But then you also started to see some reform. One, as there were step backs to the drug war when crack finally went away for the most part. But then you also saw a change in the use of force policy. In the early 90s, the Dallas PD decided that when a police officer killed someone, they would review not only the exact moment of the death, but they would also do a tactical review if there was anything else they could have done or should have done to keep that person from being dead. And that is something that police departments now are still debating whether they should be doing. Dallas did it in 1991, and that certainly started what we've now seen as many steps towards, a better relationship.
What do you make of these protests? What kind of impact are they having on the fight for criminal justice reform and real change? Are they helping?
Well, look, I think that any time you have masses of people who take to the streets on an issue, it certainly raises the profile of that issue, and it reminds lawmakers. I live here in D.C. and I used to cover Congress, and you know that sometimes lawmakers can be a little out of touch with what's going on in the rest of the country. Anytime you have thousands of people in dozens of American cities taking the streets, it shows and it underscores the importance and an urgency to that issue. And so I think that, look, when you have thousands of people who were out in Atlanta last night peacefully, when you have thousands of people who were out in Memphis last night shutting down I-40, one of the major thoroughfares in the United States of America, the bridge over the Mississippi River connecting Arkansas and Tennessee, I think that is certainly a show of power, a show of strength, a show of unity, that the nation is demanding some type of action on these issues. And so I have to imagine there's some impact to that. What that will be, we don't quite know yet, but I certainly think that the people taking to the streets can only push things forward in terms of there being some type of actual legislative or legal development as it relates to law enforcement officers and how they're held accountable when they kill.
All right, Wesley Lowery, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.